See either channels. Oh, no.
Okay. I wonder. Yeah. There we go. Anyone about?
Trainer activated.
Now, where shall I go?
Activated.
I'm going to just enable a few cheats, just because it's boring going back for fuel and repairs all the time.
Activated. Activated.
So I've got the time of day locked to early afternoon, and I've got infinite fuel and no damage.
Fair enough. You might want to just talk in your stream. Your stream can hear me too, Aj.
Interesting. So we'll edit that one. How about that? Is that coming out now? Say something. Excellent. Then all is as it should be. Yeah, well, you can we can go over entirely to Twitch and you can just chat in the text chat, or you can mute Twitch on your computer and keep chatting here. But then you won't get the sound effects, of course. Phase, what I'm using is a trainer from Cheat Happens. And basically what it does is it's essentially a memory intercept. So it just stops the vehicle health and so on from going down. I have got a steering wheel here, but it's a bit of a faff to set up. Hock Bank Rash. That's a good way of providing sound effects. Yeah, basically a driving sim with trucks, although more specifically an off-roading sim, because while there are small bits of tarmac, mostly it's less helpful surfaces. Which is why it gives you cars with lockable diffs and low-range boxes. One of the interesting things about it is that it's got, as you see here, actual deforming mud. So drive through the mud or the snow or whatever and it will leave tracks. And those tracks will then affect how other people drive through it later. Or rather, how you drive through it with other trucks. So if you could line up all US trucks, they would reach the moon. Yes, but why would you want to? Right. Okay, so I don't have any useful trailers back here. Let's see. Always on the way up there. Still, this is the vehicle I need. Gotcha. This one and the Twin Steer are both very capable off-road, but they are a bit more tricky with the side slopes. They tend to like falling over. As you see. Railways and two horses' arses. I didn't kill any trees with that yet. But don't worry, the time will come. As you see, this vehicle is quite good in the mud. Other vehicles, not so much. And it becomes pretty terrifying once you get to high speeds on the roads. I didn't kill many trees yet. I just switched the gearbox out on this one yesterday, and I haven't tried driving it much since. And it seems this new gearbox has a capability of going much faster, which means needing to be rather careful with the accelerator. Yes, it is. And no, I don't like the windscreen view much. Basically, if I used to drive a Land Rover 90, very capable off-road. I used to live in rural Scotland, and having that Land Rover was very useful. It wasn't particularly unusual for the main road to be flooded, for instance, to a depth of maybe a foot or two. So there'd be signs saying, diversion and flooding, do not pass. So it becomes very useful to be able to just keep going through it at 50 miles an hour. Well, in practice, of course, I went slowly, but it could have gone through quite happily at high speed. And, now, where am I? Gotcha. On one occasion, I was driving home late one night, stormy day, stormy night, and I'd normally turn right onto my driveway, which of course means going across traffic. So with poor visibility and terrible road conditions, I usually turned off onto a little side road, the old military road as it was known, and went round there so I could loop around and take a left off the main road, just for safety's sake. And so I'm driving along this little swirly side road, and I find that it is blocked by a fallen tree. And I thought, well, if I had a tow rope or something, I could have looped it around the tree and pulled it off the road. But I didn't. And the Land Rover had less of a turning circle and more of a turning great circle. So I decided to just put the car into low range, first gear, and just trundle over the fallen tree. Worked a treat. Would have been nice if I'd been able to clear it out for whoever was next to come along, but, can't win them all. What happened with the books? What books? Didn't have the winch attachment. In this one, you've always got the winch attachment. Observe. Now, where are we going next? Okay, straight back out that way. Ah, yeah. Yeah, I still don't know exactly which books he chucked out. But I'll find out next time I'm up there. He did send me a picture, well, a couple of pictures of some of the books he was wanting to get rid of. So I just marked out on them which ones I wanted to keep. But it's always a bit of a toss-up whether he pays attention or notices. But yeah, they've had no tips open in that area for a while now. So they've been disposing of waste by means of bonfires, which is very tiresome. Particularly this obsession with going through and throwing things away as if it's urgent. And yeah, I didn't have a winch on the Landy. I didn't have it spec'd for off-roading, just for general Scottish countryside roading. A green laner more than a full-on swamp crawler. I had road wheels on it, for instance, rather than off-road tyres. I still have had the military wheels, but they were so noisy and thirsty when running them on the road that it didn't make sense to keep them. But yeah, you might imagine then why this game appeals to me. Now, you saw how muddy that field was. It's nothing compared to this driveway. And those of you who have lived in rural Scotland, you know who you are, will recognise this sort of roads. Although I think this is probably worse. Huh? Not sure. I'm sure it wasn't a lot. Yeah, it was $5.5 grand when I bought it. Then I put a bunch of extras on it. It was very fair. It was in a great nick. Yeah, bought it in 2005. Yep. Lockable. Nope. It was a 90 rather than a series. Yeah, I mean, Landies are great vehicles. Your race car, what did you end up with? A Bourine. What race car did you get? And FaZe, what is a Bourine? Um, I know I've seen at least one MX-5. Don't know if I've seen more than one. Right. This is going... Yeah. This is going to sound weird in the on Twitch with them getting only half the conversation. But yeah. Yeah, so I had my Land Rover modified a bit. Put in aftermarket seats, so I had neck rests. Put in a work light behind the rear window, so I had light to reverse by, which was handy. FaZe, that's what we would call a green lane. Yeah, and I had it fitted with a charger for my 511 Light for Life rechargeable torch, which is a torch that uses capacitors instead of batteries. So it goes from empty to full charge in about 90 seconds and gives you an hour and a half of, I think it was about 150 lumen at the time. Very good torch, very expensive torch. And completely useless while the charge is still in the Land Rover that's been sold. As you might gather, I was not in the country at the time. Yeah, green lanes are very useful for keeping speeds down. Even if it makes life boring for the drivers. Alright, how fast do you go when you green lane? I mean, not counting the driveway to your farm. I definitely didn't go along there very fast. Honest. Jimneys are really underrated cars. Now I want to have a prog rock band called Inverted Jimny. Can I change the laws of physics? Laws of physics. And then you decided, no, I quite like it. Ah. You know that bit from Star Trek 2 where Kirk misses his chair and gets upset? COVID! It's a bugger. All in all, I would really prefer COVID to just clear off now. It's done its bit. It can go away. If you agree, we'll write a petition, send it to SARS-CoV-2. Presumably it's got a post box somewhere. It is no longer welcome. That's how it works, right? Or just tell it that people want haircuts. That'll make it disappear instantly. Most trucks don't ever have any need to countersteer, but I'm doing it. Hey, money! What shall I do next? What's this one here? Oh, no. Those are all done. Complete harbor delivery, complete instruments of development, complete lumber mill and power lines. Lumber mill. Cotton seed. Around that. Yeah, Phase, I saw that. It's looking grim. It's a strange time with the countries. No, Discord. Don't connect to that one. Oh, that's a nice little thing. Very clean engine. That was not the state of my Land Rover by the time I sold it. There we go. Yeah, I switched to Discord on my iPad, and it was still logged in on the voice chat from previously. Now, let us see. Mm-hmm. Right. That's all right. I probably don't know what a crankcase breather is. So it all works out in the end. So what's the quickest way of getting a car to that one? Let's go to the garage here. And we want something that'll pull a curtain side trailer. In general, I've color-coded my vehicles, so orange is for the sort of mud areas and blue is for the Arctic. Just to help me keep them organized. But then I've borrowed cars left and right, so it's not entirely correct anymore. I think that curtain side trailer was a smallish one. Oh, this one's still Arctic spec. Big engine. Must have big engine. No diff lock. Look at that. Indeed. I mean, that's actually fairly fairly ecological, given that there's 8,000 cars on them. And much of the way they can actually drift. So what they do is they reduce their speed and economical speeds. I mean, not that I, until Tuesday, work for a car shipping company or anything. Yeah. Yeah. And incredibly dangerous. One thing that's rather neat about this game is the way that the physics engine is actually used even for attachments on the cars. So if you look at the jerry can and tyre on the roof there, they're actually held in place by the lashings on the physics engine. I don't know if they can actually fall off, but I suppose it's theoretically possible. So this is way too fast for this road. Okay, so handbrake turns don't quite work. I like having lots of lights. Lights are good when it's dark. Now, what's the most expedient way to get up there? Gotcha. But yeah, this also has a multiplayer mode. So you can have up to 4 people driving around at any one time. Which is pretty useful when someone stuffs their vehicle. Because while these small Scout class vehicles can have what they call autonomous winches, which means the winch has separate battery power and can work even when it's flipped over, because the engine doesn't work if you flip it. The bigger vehicles need the engine to be running to be able to winch it out. And if it's upside down, the engine's not running, so then you need to go off and bring another vehicle over. Some aspects of this are way easier than in real off-roading, like throwing out a winch like that, so I don't roll on the hill. That's often referred to as ninja winching. I really wish it was possible to send off missions to, re-tarmac all these roads and get the place into some semblance of order. Oh, 5 viewers. Hello, everyone. Who are the others? As you see, engine stalls, winch still operational. That's because these Scout class vehicles are designed to be able to go out and scout for things without needing vehicles with them to pull them back on the right keel. Arc-en-ciel. Who do I know who might be a French rainbow? You're right, that's no clue, but a fascinating mystery nevertheless. None of them are stream elements. By the way, those of you watching the stream, just to check if things are working as they should be, can you see in the top left corner a list of active cheats? Well, you're very welcome, Arc-en-ciel. Yeah, don't we all? Too small to read. Let's see if we can fix that. Oh, that's big. That should do the job. Ah, the mystery is resolved. No longer will we wonder who done it. As you might imagine, a key element. Oh, nice! It's actually got pulled up mud under the water. Now, is there a shortcut? Might be able to. What say ye, chat? Shall we try to take a shortcut up the hill? Or shall we be sensible and follow the road? Chat. Follow the real muddy road. I don't know, I think the shortcut might be more fun. Much more chance of flipping over and having to winch myself free. It would be nice if they added land anchors to this. And sand ladders. You can't go wrong with a sand ladder. Now, this might look impossible, but there is actually an entire motorsports branch devoted to it. Generally not with cars with this much stuff on the roof, of course. But yeah, this is a peculiarly addictive game. The Suicidal Motorsports branch. Yes, it's Icelandic rock climbing, or rock scramble, or whatever they call it. Where they basically take absurdly overpowered cars, stick absurdly huge wheels on them, stand at the bottom of a steep scree, and then see how long it takes them to get to the top. Yeah, this trailer's too big for it. If only there were another way of pulling a trailer. It is unfortunate that the game doesn't actually tell you what type of trailer it is. No face cam. I can't plug it in right at the moment. No, I haven't done any sort of formal off-roading. Just the off-roading that came naturally with living in Scotland. Let's go and fetch a more pullable truck. This one, by the way, looks incredibly cool. I'll just show you it. As you see, it's articulated, so it's waist steered. Really cool looking truck, but an absolute pain in the arse to drive. Not a fan of it. I like the Crash bores. What shall we use? Yeah, go with the old favourite. Because you just can't go wrong with this one. It's my car and I'll go wrong if I want to. Something like that? Yes, speaking of Hakal, you have doubtless heard of surströmming, or as Anglophone people are wont to refer to it, surströmming. A Scottish friend of mine, who is in fact chatting to me on Discord at this moment, went to Sweden, and one of his alleged friends, not me on this instance, I wouldn't be caught dead with surströmming, had procured a can of the stuff to, yes, the poison death fish. And he'd got hold of a tin of this stuff to try it out on the lunatic foreigner. No, not the Geneva Convention. People always get this wrong. It's the Hague Conventions. The Hague and the Bern Conventions, usually. Not Geneva. It's just that Geneva's more glamorous. Anyway. That's my job. Anyway, so this tin of surströmming had been procured, and the alleged friend opened it gleefully, got his phone out to record the ensuing chaos as the lunatic foreigner sampled the famously rancid fish. And that all went a bit downhill when the lunatic foreigner liked it. Which he has now confirmed in Discord. Phase. The Geneva Convention is not the one that most of those famous rules of war come from. Things like expanding bullets and incendiary weapons and whatnot, those are in the Bern and Hague Conventions. Amongst other things, yes, treatment of prisoners. And the Geneva Convention has a great deal to say on how wars are fought, but not on those specific things that people always refer them to. But yes, I know of an organisation that I sometimes help out with training for people going abroad, and part of it is capture training, rather like SEER in the US and Escape and Evasion in the UK. And as part of the capture phase, they're put in a room with, all the usual stuff, stress positions, white noise, and other things I can't go into because I haven't done it and I don't know. And one of the stressors they include is an opened tin of surströmming. Faze's brain isn't working well, so he's a bit tired and a bit molten. I found my fan today, and it is glorious. I've got it plugged in right now. It's missing the front grille, so, I have to try not to poke my finger in it. But still, it's making the room much more bearable. I'm cautious about Alex, but he's 8 now rather than 4, so much more capable of looking out for himself in regards to that. Phase, I've got no cheats on about climbing things. This is just a good truck with a low center of gravity and a heavy front, with good wheels, good tires, and lots of torque. Now, I do actually have some trucks that I can put a car on the load bed of. Unfortunately, while ordinary cargo can be secured, vehicles can't, which is a pity because they tend to fall off a lot. Now let's see if this can pull it. Yes, excellent. Exactly. That's the way it's got to be, Sometimes it just has an itch and it needs to scratch it against a tree. Oh, good. I don't need to go all the way back there. I mean, this lorry isn't exactly dainty, but it's great fun to drive and it goes anywhere. And I only sometimes flip it. Off you go, Faze. Have fun. Isn't that always the way? When you're following channels, they all start coming online just when you're wanting to log out and get some sleep. There's a channel I like to watch, Viventar, and he always goes online really late. Sort of starting about 10 o'clock at night, going until 4 in the morning. So I don't get to catch many of those streams. Now, where am I going? There we go. Broken lumber mill. Nice short jaunt. And then we discover whether or not that bridge is working now. Walkthroughs? No problem with that. As I say, there's a reason my main gaming channel is called Torek Cheats. Basically, I don't have time for grind. So if I get stuck, I'm quite happy seeking help. Whether that's in the form of cheat codes, or trainers, or walkthroughs. I tend to try them without first, but bottom line, I'm in it for the fun and the story rather than the challenge. The line that I do draw, of course, is in multiplayer. You don't cheat in multiplayer because then it's affecting other people. And that's just not on. A flesh-seeking paw. I mean, that's probably more than we need to know. Oh no! Here is a bridge that is not in order. If only I had something that was capable of pulling even a large trailer like this through a swamp. I mean, FaZe, you're not making it better. It's above the waterline. And they never said there was anything in it. So you see there how it's deforming the mud under the wheels. And then if I were to drive along in another vehicle in those tracks, it would affect the steering and everything. So that's pretty cool. It's handy when people ship balloons. Huzzah! Now it wants concrete blocks and metal beams. I see metal beams over here. Let's just scurry on over there and nick those metal beams. Take these metal beams and something else, I don't know that tune. Sleep well, Phase. Yeah, that's about all I know of that one. I mean, I'm glad I'm not the person who has to clean these trucks. Yeah. That's gone well. Now, how do we do this? Like any winching, it's a matter of order of operations. And placement is everything. I mean, yeah, driving through a cleaner river is very much the approach I'm going for. Oh, I don't have a saddle on this one. Never fear. I don't have a crane on this one. But what can we find? Log station. What can we get there? These trucks are... Oh god, this one doesn't have all-wheel drive. Let's get this one configured properly. So, what's everyone else up to today? Bigger engine. Off-road gearbox. Yeah. Let's give it some proper mud tyres. Dungarees. Fair enough. Let me just see if my colleague has popped in here. Now, where did I put the... There's the map. And it's the Western Star 6900 twin steer. And we want the raised suspension. Alaska White Valley. Oh, all the way over there. All right. And it is off to the side. All right. Let's go over there. There aren't that many accidents involving trucks, only 500,000 a year. Goodo then. About there. Let's see what we have. That's nearby. What's the best way there? Actually, let's pop over the bridge. We can probably pick up those bricks on the way. We can't grab all of them, but, you know, we can help out a bit. But we are nice people, are we not? Let's pop up here. Now remember, in reality, if you're wanting to winch a heavy crate of bricks, always make sure that you're parking your lorry on a rickety wooden bridge first, because this is entirely safe. That's how it works, right? There we go. Now we back up and see if there's cargo space on the lorry standing up here. Yeah, they're marvellous, aren't they? They have special repulsor lift engines, is what they have. That's how it works. Da, da, da. I mean, it's pretty fun that they've made a crane system that actually works pretty well. All in all, it's a really nicely made game, this. And there's a few things I'd edit, obviously. But that goes for any game. So let's head off and pick up more bricks. I wonder where it is they're supposed to go afterwards. Oh, right, just over there. Marvellous. One thing I find interesting about those pipelines is the massive 90-degree angles they put in them. Now, I once did a project for a contest that the Royal Institute of Navigation holds every year, or it used to hold anyway, I don't know if they still do, the Young Navigators Contest, where my project was basically following the construction of a pipeline going through Scotland and across to Ireland. And as part of that, I ended up learning a fair bit about how the pipelines were built and maintained and so on. Very interesting, of course, for those of a more nerdy inclination. Like, of course, nobody I could possibly suggest, like, me. And as part of that, they showed me how they actually clean the pipelines. They have something called a pig that they feed into it at one end, and then it shoots through the pipeline under high pressure, cleaving snugly to the sides from all directions, and wiping them clean of any gunk that shouldn't be there. And then they remove it at the other end. Now, I'm quite curious to see how such a pig would negotiate those 90-degree turns. I'm going to start by taking these to the lumber mill, just to hand them in, and then we'll grab the last batch of bricks in a bit. It's a strange game, this, really. It's very slow, not much happens, and you don't really accomplish a great deal for the time you spend in it. But it's just really nice and relaxing and addictive. And very much a case of sitting down, doing a mission or two and discovering that, oh, 4 hours have passed. Plonk. Now, raised suspension is, of course, really useful for some things. It's great for getting through the muck better. But the downside is that it makes it a bit easier to flip over when you're going on side slopes. Which is a hazard. Also, they haven't quite got the structure of these trucks right. Because if you look at this, and you'll see this on almost all of them, the crane is about a metre away from the bulkhead, and the load bed is far back as well. Whereas normally the crane would be right up there, and the load bed would be right up there, and you wouldn't have this massive overhang at the back, which stops you from attaching a trailer. So that's a bit unfortunate, but you know, nothing to really be done about it. Obviously, all these little trees by the side of the road, I am doing my bit for deforestation. I wonder if that's supposed to be against deforestation. If it is, I've completely missed the point on that. Excellent. So yeah, it's pretty fascinating to just watch things like how the trucks interact with the world around them. You know, seeing the way branches bend as they go past, and the mud and snow getting tracks. I mean, there you see, there's even different kinds of tracks depending on whether there's no snow or thick snow or thin snow. Of course, being a Swede, we see a lot of different types of snow here. Imagine if the cargo had a double-decker mode. So we've actually got a bit sidetracked here because I was really going to just grab that upgrade and apply it to my twin steer back down in Michigan. So, but got a quest done on the way to grab the upgrades. That'll do nicely. Let's just pop over here, grab the upgrade, and then go back and raise the suspension of my twin steer. It occurs to me that I should be, doing all the usual streamer stuff. I can't do the raging, I'm afraid. I'm not very good at that. Ah, who put that lamp pole there? Ah, oh. And so on. I could do the whole like and subscribe, guys. It really helps me out. If that's of any interest. But, everyone does that. And everyone knows that they should. So, what's the point? And I don't have any merch to sell yet. Maybe I should do merch. Yeah, mine used to do that a lot too. He used to sit there pretending to be streaming. And he'd sit there going, so, okay guys, today we're going to... It was pretty cute. Now, I wonder if there's any other upgrades here that we can grab while we're at it. There's a rather useful map for this at maprunner.info that has all the upgrade locations and things. But let's switch back to Michigan. Minecraft the classic. I briefly got into Minecraft because of my son, of course, and made a full-scale replica of one of the ships that we have at the company that I have my side job with. Now we can have bigger mud tyres. It's pretty fun. I find it more fun as a building game than a survival game. Okay, so 2 sets of metal beams I can probably carry. But I don't need to drive all the way through there. Oh, I was going to go to the other place, wasn't I? Let's just get these all recovered. And then we'll switch to Island Lake, wasn't it? So we'll pop in here, grab a twin stair. No, I don't want to be in Smithville Dam. Or do I? Yes, because there's no thing in Island Lake. Okay. Right. Yeah, not this one. Let's go with the other one. Why don't I have any of the other ones available? What do I have here? Yeah, exactly. You go through and you find various missions scattered about the place. And then you go off and do them. Now let's see what we've got here. Here, for instance, I've got a few sort of scattered tasks. Riverside repair. Service spare parts and wooden planks. Yeah, we can probably do this one. But I'll grab a different truck to pick up the spare parts. Because otherwise it's a bit of a faff. Oh, and it's nice and close there too. Excellent. So as you see, the mission here is to deliver 2 crates of spare parts and 2 pallets of wooden planks to the boatman's house, because he's doing repairs. Oh, good heavens, what am I wearing? Hello, Potato. How and who are you? Oh, you're not getting any game sound. Let me just check. It should be providing it. That's tiresome. Well, let's just ignore this and go back to the original setup I had. There we go. That should give you some sound. I switched it to a different audio channel while I was still chatting on Discord, but Discord's gone silent now for a while anyway. This should do the job. Can you hear me now? Or can you hear the trucks now? Marvellous. So 2 crates of service spare parts. Are the volume levels about right? What's the best way there? Excellent. Then we'll take this road up here. Much of this game is just navigational challenges, which is pretty much the way I like it. No, we're not going to do that actually. We're going to go this way. Because I see a corner there that I know is pretty arsey with trucks that tilt easily. So, Flaming Potato, who might you be? Pretty much, yeah. I'm telling it where I want to go. It doesn't have an automatic route selection. Presumably because if real sat-navs can drive people into rivers, even when trying to keep them on the roads, a sat-nav can hardly be expected to work when you're just as likely to go off them. Particularly when the roads can be at varying angles from horizontal. Very varying sometimes. We're just making our way through here. It gets a bit slow when it's on steep uphills with poor grip. It always manages to grab it sooner or later. It's a weird thing really with driving games. You always feel like you should be expecting to race. And then you get a game where it's very much a case of taking things slowly and methodically and trying not to roll over. But yeah, this had two precursors, this game. It had the first one, which was more of a proof of concept than a proper game, really, called Spin Tires. Where it was mostly about getting the mud physics working and, you know, nailing down the whole driving feel of it. And it was alright. The driving was great, although the fact that the steering didn't reset to centre was a bit weird. But the main problem with it was that there just wasn't any game in it. It was just drive here, pick up logs, drive logs somewhere else, and it got incredibly dull really quickly. Mud Runner I haven't tried yet, but this is the second sequel, Snowrunner, which actually has objectives, which is nice. Here's that truck you saw earlier. I've got quite a few of these because there's so much space on the back. But this particular mission, rather than load these crates across, I'm actually going to stick with this one. Because it's quite a tight parking space. went tank driving once. Got to drive a military 6x6 lorry on an off-road course. That was good fun. The Berlier GBC, sort of French army thing. Pretty surprising that it was more capable than the armoured personnel carriers they also had. The one thing I really wish they had in this game, though, is a stalwart. It is an amphibious 6x6 lorry that the British Army used to use. And they had one at that tank driving day adapted for customers to drive, so basically rather than being an enclosed NBC-proof cabin, they'd cut it open so people could climb in easier. Huge fun to drive. Slightly scary. The way it works is that it's actually got the steering wheel in front of the front axle. So you turn the wheel and for a moment nothing happens. But then it eventually starts slewing around. At the moment I'm attaching the winch to whatever solid things I can find. Often things like fallen logs and whatnot. Because the resistance that they have, just from the roots dragging in the mud, is often enough to get these vehicles unstuck. And most of these will actually get through eventually anyway, but winching just makes it go a bit faster. Do I even have mud tyres on this? Yes. Exactly, it's marvellous. My feet stay dry and clean, and the swamp stays defeated. I'm actually back on the starting map now. There were a few missions that weren't complete, so might as well do them since we're here. Now, annoyingly, the boatman has put the delivery slot in his back garden, which is unhelpful. But he probably didn't need those trees. Now to go and get some planks. Obviously, there are some things about the way you drive in this that wouldn't work in real life. Liability insurance, for one. Now we're just going to go down to the sawmill. Actually, I wonder if there's any trucks already there. Nah. Oh, that's a long way around. Oh, wait. Let's get you recovered. Sort of. Now, what might be a useful one here? That one's quite handy. Just making sure I upgrade everything I can for now. There we go. Excellent. I seem to recall this one's pretty nippy, despite having really low suspension. Yeah, nice and fast. As I say, you don't often need to counter-steer in a lorry. And if you do, you're probably going dangerously fast. Which obviously I would never dream of doing. Ever. Actually, I think those might even be closer. And fast as the Tiger is, I can't be bothered to spend ages driving it all the way up. Yeah, exactly. It's a fun balance of realism and game. And the maps are pretty nice as well. Although I hope that Michigan isn't this broken in reality. Because in this game, Michigan is really on the ropes. As I mentioned, the story is that here in Michigan there's been a massive flood that's washed away much of the infrastructure and so on. So out here in the rural regions, roads are much gone, infrastructure's buggered, houses are buggered, gardens and fields are buggered. I don't think of it as adding to the bugginess, I think of it as helping clear the space around the road, so they'll be able to resurface them and get the infrastructure back into commission. Because let's face it, when you've got conifers right up against the side of the road, you can't really widen it. It's always going to be a single track. So if I run down a few trees, they'll be able to widen the road and make it possible to pass people. It's all for their greater good. Down there. Must be something down there. I do wish there was a bit more going on in the world, though. What's creepy? I should really watch Hot Fuzz again. I'm decent at a fair few accents, but the West Country one is not one of my showcase accents, put it that way. He didn't need that fence, did he? Also, that's a really tough shed. I mean, look, why would you put the offload point in the back garden surrounded by junk? show off my accents. The circumstances, ooh are. Go on then, what accent? Pick an accent, any accent. I'll have to think. The usual one I do is the Scottish accent, but that comes with having grown up in the borders. If that counts. Island Lake, wasn't it? Let's go here. Do we have any trucks in Island Lake? Just the transports. This one. Yes, that will be acceptable. Now we want to go to Island Lake. And the gateway to that is down there. And what do we have here that we could pick up? A sidewalk trailer, no. Concrete blocks, metal beams. Yeah. Would make life easier. Same with changing to winter tires. But also I grew up helping to change to winter tires here in Sweden. So I got pretty good at it. Didn't do it for a bunch of years, of course. But when my father-in-law's, well, now ex-father-in-law's Jeep got a puncture down in South Africa, I was able to get the tyre replaced in, I think it was under 10 minutes or so. Got the job done. All the engine noises pan all the way over to the left. That's slightly disturbing, actually. Ah yes, the famed Gloucestershire winters. Yeah, one moment. I once heard an American person pronounce it Gloucestershire, which I found impressive in its own way. But yeah, I've never spent much time down in the southwest. My sister's working down there now. Got a few mates over in Wales, over in Glamorgan, one in Barry, and of course I was initially born and raised in Berkshire, but that's over the other side, really. Yeah. Yeah, that dropped cargo has been annoying me for some time. Ah. Just across the border, eh? Whereabouts? Aren't they all? Yeah, I was born in Reading, and then grew up, well, grew slightly up to about the age of 5 in a place called Yateley, just into Hampshire. Of course, things were odd back then. There were tales of a witch in the village. See what I mean about these larger vehicles being a bit unstable? I have to cheat a bit. One thing I don't like is that the winch only has a pull option and no option to pay it out, which would otherwise be useful in many occasions. I have no idea. The greatest proof that I was shown of it was that if you hung an onion above your stairs, then if there was a witch, the onion would shrivel within a week. As you might imagine, it's high diagnostics indeed. I mean, that can be useful. Sometimes it's good to have two thumbs on each hand. Yeah, I know that one. Moved up to Scotland when I was 5 or 6. And of course, in semi-rural Scotland, if you don't have at least, 4 or 5 generations back, then you're an incomer. They'll be quite pleasant to you, very welcoming, lovely place to live, but of course you'll always know that you're not quite a proper local yet. As I say, grew up there. My Highland accent is less convincing. My American accent is atrocious. Like all Brits who haven't had vocal training for American accents, it ends up swaying wildly between mid-Atlantic, down south, Texan, and half a dozen accents in between. For a long time, I always ended up sounding Pakistani whenever I did a Welsh accent. But it's getting gradually better. It's the thing about accents, of course. You have to keep using them, otherwise they go stale. But yeah, once at work we've got Workplace, which is the sort of internal corporate Facebook, and someone on it, here in Sweden, bear in mind, discovered the world's second longest place name. Now, obviously, being British, it's one of those that you hear about when you're a kid, have one stab at, stumble wildly, and then decide, oh well, I'll leave that one to the locals to say. But when, as a Brit in Sweden, with a reputation for languages and accents, someone says, I wonder if anyone on here can pronounce this, that's when you make sure that you don't comment on it initially, so that nobody knows how long it takes to learn. And then you go home for 4 days and you start practicing it. And then you finally upload a little video of yourself to Workplace saying "Llan ffair pwyn geco gerech yn drob eich silio go go go." And then they are, of course, suitably impressed, and all is well with the world. Now, where can we find some metal? We've got metal beams. Where can we find some concrete blocks? We had something similar to that in Brussels, where I went to school. The Belgian Commune Blues, which is a blues containing the names of all the Belgian communes. That's not a commune in the 70s hippies sense. That's commune as in local council. And it's sort of, I've been to Haarlem, Evergem, Adergem, and so on, Gil, and so on. Now, can we find some concrete blocks on this trailer, or is it just junk that's not going to be interesting? Pretty niche, but if you're living in Belgium, then it's useful to be able to learn them all. I just learned the ones that I actually lived in. Huh. This actually has everything I need on it. I wonder. We could grab something with a tow hitch. No, I don't try to remember them. It's having a bit of a think. Can I give this one some proper muds? No. No mud tires. What can we do with you? This looks like it could be fun. Let's see if I've got anything more suited. I suppose really what I ought to do is just keep them all in the mud configuration, finish all of Michigan, and then start going off to do the tedium, or rather then start doing the ice missions. Yeah, let's put this back in mud configuration. But will the high saddle work? It's a long way to go to find out that the saddle is too high. Let's try this one first, because it's going to be faster. Oh, it's a nippy little thing. Yeah, handbrake turns aren't really a thing in this game. And steering can be a matter of approximation. Fortunately, there's no one else on the road, so I can use the entire width. Actually, you know what occurs to me? I can pop back there and check. Because we saw what kind of trailer that was, didn't we? So we can just pop over here to the trailer shop and see if this style of trailer will fit on it. Okay, so the high saddle will not work on it, and then we'll just confirm that by checking if this can attach to it, and I suspect it'll say not. Yeah. Excellent, then we've picked the right truck. I'd quite like it if this game had some other traffic, even if it's just, you know, a few people going about their business or people at the work sites, that sort of thing. It just gets a bit too empty otherwise. This is making surprisingly good progress in auto. That's a great corner for ninja winching. So tomorrow, at least for this time round, is my second to last day at my side job. Basically, my main job is working harbour security, but my side job is tracing a particular invasive species for a Ro-Ro shipping company. So Ro-Ro is roll on, roll off, basically large cargo ships where the cargo can roll on and roll off. So car carriers primarily. And there's a species of insect called brown marmorated stink bug that is dangerous for the biosecurity of Australia and New Zealand. So any ship that's got a bunch of them alive on board isn't allowed to call Australia or New Zealand. So we have to make sure that there aren't any. And if there are, the ship gets sent off for treatment, which is expensive. So we try to make sure that none of them get on in the first place. Anyway, so what with the whole COVID thing, an awful lot of car manufacturers have cut down their manufacturing of cars. So there's been a hiring freeze and they weren't able to extend my contract. So they've had to let that lapse for the time being. But they say they do want me back basically as soon as they can. Which is always promising. And they gave me a gift card for about 150 quid as a going away present. Well, first of all, you take all the cargo that's going on the ship and you put it in a tent that is essentially a giant oven. And you heat the tent up to 60 degrees, centigrade of course, and you leave it there for half an hour or so, and that'll kill all of the bugs that are in the vehicles. And then once they get aboard the ship, you have the crew search the entire ship. That's 13 decks carrying up to 8,000 cars every day. And then if they find any bugs, they report them in to me. And I then compile them in a database. I say database, it's an Excel spreadsheet. They're 15 to 17 millimeters long. And they particularly like to hide in the rubber seals of doors. So as you might imagine, it's a bit of a job, bearing in mind that the crews on these ships already have their main jobs to do, which is already a full-time job. Oh yes, it's a big job. But we've been doing pretty well so far. All putting in the work. Or some of us putting in the work in a digital form, others doing the actual work. But, you know, statistics and analysis, that eventually, yes, they get collected and then handed over to biosecurity officers in Oceania. Go on then, what's yours that's mad? Sane is boring. Don't do sane. Insulting is good. Insulting pays the bills. Yep. What's wrong with that? It's like moon cups. They're not for me, but a lot of people find them useful. Nothing bonkers about that. But as any Scrubs fan will tell you, everything does come down to it. So I'm told. Yeah, as I say, I would not be convinced. I have a tendency to trust absorption rather than a good cervical seal, but as I say, it's not something that I need to worry about. I mean, that's also an accurate description. That would be accurate to what I do as well. Because when you're standing guarding a quayside, you've got to make the time pass somehow. Oh, this is a very low rig. Yes. I think being a parent makes one much less squeamish about that sort of thing. when my son was born down in South Africa, I was living, well, my now ex-wife and I were living with her parents in their granny flat, and we'd tried changing the frog on the, on the bed with a little underlay and so on, and it just wasn't particularly practical. So I borrowed my father-in-law's workshop and built a changing table. Worked really well. Worked a treat for several years until he stopped needing nappies. Now what do they need for this bridge? In fact, that changing table worked so well that my in-laws were able to sell it once I was done with it. Which I decided to take as a compliment. Oh, they don't want to deal with it. Well, I don't do a lot of woodwork. I did woodwork at school when I was in secondary. But that was a long time ago. Since then I've built maybe 3 or 4 things. But it's one of those things where a methodical mindset and precision will help a lot. Exactly. I remember on one occasion I was changing a nappy, and you know that moment when you see an infant smile while you're changing a nappy, and you know where it's going. You know exactly what's about to happen. So I dodged just in time, and just in time to get out of the way of a high-pressure stream of brown shooting across and hitting the wall on the opposite side. So sometimes you get those times where you have to either laugh or complete breakdown. And then the only sane option is to laugh. Indeed not. Both the projectile and, of course, the kind where they're sitting in their little chair, in their little onesie, and they give you that big grin, and then you smell that something's off. And then you think, I wonder where that's coming from. Because you have to wonder where it's coming from, in the hopes that it's not coming from where you think it's coming from. Where you know really that it's coming from. And then you think, I've got to have a look, haven't I? And then you have a look and you realise that it's bubbling up all around the top of the nappy. And out the sides of the onesie. And coating the entire chair. Because it turns out it's actually been welling up for the last 10 minutes. And then you think, I'm going to have to clean that up, aren't I? So you do, and you have a giggle about it, because otherwise, you know. Well, the funny thing is, I mean, it'll happen in any nappy if the quantity is large enough and it doesn't get noticed for long enough. But, yeah, we eventually got back to Sweden, and instead of the name brand nappies, we ended up using the local supermarket chain's own brand nappies, and discovered that they were actually better than any of the other ones we'd tried, which was rather satisfying. They were also about half the price. So that was rather pleasing. Yeah. And then there's the interesting stage of trying to figure out when they're ready to not wear nappies as well. So we were on holiday back in Scotland with my dad, and we'd been to Tesco's to get a pack of nappies for the duration. And what we didn't realise was that we'd actually picked up the sort of temporary nappies, the kind that are designed to work for... Oh, there's a post there. The kind that are designed to be uncomfortable when worn, so that they'll... Well, not uncomfortable as such, but they're supposed to be noticeable when worn, so that the kid learns to go to the toilet. But we didn't know that. We thought they were normal nappies, because the packaging was unclear. And so we were pretty annoyed with these things, you know. Terrible leakage, just going everywhere. And we thought, these nappies really aren't very good. Until we actually read the back of the packaging a bit more carefully. And we thought, 4 to 6 hours, gotcha. So we started using them the way they were intended to be used, and by the end of the holiday, Sprogling was toilet trained. You know, these things did the job in 4 days, which was pretty remarkable. I mean, that was a more fecal conversation than usual, but, you know. Yeah. North Bridge. No, I can't be bothered going up there yet. Actually, let's do those. Huzzah! Shall we do that one? Oh, we might as well, since we're here. Some of these roads could do with an adverse canvas sign, I feel. What's this one? Power lines. Metal beams. I've got some spare metal beams. Tell you what, though, if I was fitting power lines, I wouldn't want to make power pylons out of metal. Anyway, yes, so that's my side job. And it'll be interesting to see how long it takes before things get going again so they can hire me again. But, yeah, my normal day job, as I say, is harbour security, and during the summer, it's mostly a summer job, because in the winter there's no cruise ships. So then we've got just the stationary locations and checkpoints and things. which is all very lovely, but it does mean that there's not much to do in the winters, and we rely on those 290 cruise ships turning up in the summer. Guess how many cruise ships turned up this summer? Ah, let's... No, that's not a problem. Yeah, not doing that right now. Across here and then down. Exactly. We've had a couple of luxury yachts in, but that's about it. Normally we have, as I say, this year we were going to have almost 300 cruise ships in. Each cruise ship means anything from 2 to 30 guards on duty. Lots of work, lots of hours. And of course an awful lot of money coming in for Stockholm in tourists. But instead, Stockholm's going to lose out on, in the region of, will it be about £50 million? Just in tourist spending. And of course that has similarly bumpy effects on our hours. There's the farmer's house. Oh, I can't be bothered doing this one right now. Absolutely. And much of it could have been avoided if governments had taken it seriously rather than doing their thing. It's the sort of show that would have been applicable to our earlier conversation about nappies. I think Sweden might cope with it economically better, what with the impossibility of locking down, so the economy's kept running. But instead, of course, we've had large numbers of deaths. And I'm sure that there are ways in which that can be seen as a fair trade-off. But I'm not keen about being the person who says, yes, all these people have died, but it's saved us a few million. It's an interesting one. I mean, not to get political or anything. Yeah, viewers dropped from 3 to 1. I'm sure that's got nothing to do with the COVID conversation. Anyways, so normally harbour security is great fun. It's a relatively calm job. There's relatively few arguments, very few fights. The worst arguments we ever get is people who don't want to let us throw away their food that they insist on bringing with them. Yeah. Let's see if we can pull this car back to the owner. Where does it belong? Huntsman and the car. Oh, well, that way. Let's leave it here for now. Yeah, you see what I mean about this truck being a bit wobbly. So, let's do this. Righto. Well, thanks for coming. And have a good sleep. And there we go, cargo duly loaded. Have fun. I'll probably call it a night there as well. Night, folks.